So there's no perspective whatsoever for those women. And just last week, they even passed a new law forbidding women from working in healthcare and educating themselves in healthcare. So now you have poverty, fewer doctors, nurses, no access to healthcare for women without a man. It's like it's a total downward spiral. It is no secret that the situation of women and girls in Afghanistan, which had significantly improved in the years after 2001, regardless of the conflicts, the situation of women and girls had really improved. It has taken not one step backwards, but many steps backwards. When the Taliban took over power, they presented themselves as Taliban, as sort of like a more milder form of Taliban rule. They made quite a few promises to the international community, particularly about the rights of women and girls, and they have not kept any of their promises. It's even worse. The most symbolic of them is the law which passed a few months ago, which prohibits women from letting their voice be heard in public. The biggest part of the aid which the European Union provides at this moment is very much directed to humanitarian needs. So we see at the moment that 90% of the Afghan people live under the poverty line, that 22 million are directly dependent on humanitarian aid for their basic needs. We know that there are also some very small but promising initiatives of sort of like private schools, which people are arranging in a sort of informal way, where also women and girls are receiving an education, particularly girls. This is really important also for the financial means directed to Afghanistan, is to keep Afghanistan on the agenda, because we see a very complicated, severe geopolitical situation with a lot of crisis in the Middle East, in Sudan, in some parts of Asia as well, in other parts of Africa. And we are afraid that Afghanistan will disappear from the radar, and that it will become a forgotten humanitarian crisis. The economic situation is disastrous. There's no healthcare. There's no opportunities. There's no foreign investment. There's nothing. So our hope is that the regime at some point will have to pay attention to what the international donors are saying. And the international donors, with the European Union up front, is saying no human rights, no respect for women and girls, no long-term development. Poverty and extreme poverty in such an environment is a breeding ground for radicalization. So there is a very clear security aspect to the situation in Afghanistan, which we should not forget. And it's not because Afghan people might be prone to any sort of violence, is because desperation is a breeding ground for radicalization. We know that it happens in Afghanistan, it happens in Europe, it happens in America, it happens all around the world.